Okay, in this video I'll be showing you the basic parts of the mill and how to put in a tool and take out a tool. So first we have the quill, and this is the quill stop. You can adjust that so it has a repeatable stop every time. This is the head, the whole thing. It's on a swivel, so down here you can turn this whole thing around. You can tilt the head left and right and forward and back. But we don't do that. We like the machine to stay square. Someone's already put in the work to make sure that this is perpendicular to the table and everything is square to each other. And that's how we like it. This is the on-off switch. There's a forward and a reverse. When the machine is in high gear, which it normally is, means it spins a little bit faster, we'll leave it in forward, so we'll flip it up. But when it's in low gear, the gears inside reverse the direction. So we have to put it in reverse for low gear. This is the spindle brake. So there's a thing in here called the spindle. And when you want it to stop, you push on the brake real hard and it'll come to a stop. There's some other stuff on here that I'm not going to get into because we don't use it. So not a big deal there. This is how we adjust the speed. When you adjust the speed, the machine has to be running. There is a belt in here, and if you adjust the speed, if you turn this handle and then turn on the machine, it will snap the belt. It will break the whole tool. So make sure that the machine's always running before you change the speed. We use these inside numbers for high gear and the outside numbers for low gear. This is the vise. There's a hex on the end, so when you go to tighten it, you can grab it with the wrench. But if you just need to move it quickly, you can use your hand. There is a little bit of slop in here, so this back part will move forward and back a little bit, but this front part will stay rigid to the rest of the vise. This vise has been bolted to the table and squared to the table, so this back edge here is parallel with this table. So when you move it back and forth, it'll stay straight. So we have a Cartesian coordinate system. So we have X, Y, and Z. This is just the quill Z. There's another way to change it here. This is the handle. It's got little castle grooves on it that mesh with the machine. So you can go down or you can go up. So all of these handles have little indications on them. So you can measure how far the table has gone, but we don't really use those anymore because we have a DRO, which is a digital readout. There's a switch on the back here. So we're going to turn that on. It does its thing. And now we have a display in inches, and 5 decimal places is ridiculous. We really only use 3 because that's about the precision of the machine. But kind of want to look at that 4th digit and make sure that whichever way it's going to round, up or down, is closer to the 3rd digit that you're looking for. Anytime you leave the machine, you want to turn it off, just flip the switch on the back again, just to keep the display from burning out. When you need to set your X and Y zeros, you can push the button and it will set the 0. If you've made a mistake before you move the machine, you can push it again and it will display the previous value. We have some collets here. These are R8 collets. They are tapered and they have a little groove in there. The groove indexes with a little tooth inside of the spindle, and that's what keeps it from rotating. And up here, there's a drawbar. We leave this in the machine, but this has threads on it that match the collet. So when we go to put this in there, we'll tighten that up, and I'll show you that in a little bit. Choosing the appropriate size collet, these have numbers on them. So on here, this one says 5/8, and I happen to have a 5/8 end mill, and it fits very nicely. I'll go into more detail about how to pick those later. When you're moving the machine, you want to make sure that you're going the correct direction. Whenever you turn a handle clockwise, the table will move away from you. And when you move it counterclockwise, the table will move towards you. That works the same over here. So if we turn it clockwise, the table moves away from me. And if I move it counterclockwise, the table moves back towards me. There are a couple of brakes on the machine so that we don't move the table or the quill accidentally while we're trying to do something. So for the X direction, we have a brake right here, this little handle. So you tighten that up, and then the table is much more difficult to turn or to move. So if the table is not moving real well, go ahead and check that that's loose. You only need one of them. There is a second one over here, but you only really need one for the stuff that we're doing. Likewise, for the Y direction, there's a brake over here under the table. You pull that towards you, tighten it up, and it will stay put. So I'll leave that loose. And then for the quill, this handle here, go ahead and move this all the way down so that it doesn't get in the way. There are two things that spin here. There's a jam nut and the actual stop. You can use this gradient, or you can just set the Z height and put the quill where it needs to be, and then move this up to match. So that's good enough. You move the quill, and it will rotate several turns. It'll go a full 4 inches of travel. So if you set it there and turn this little knob, it'll lock and it'll stay right there. Now, sometimes this handle is in the way. If you pull it out, you can rotate it freely without moving the spindle. So you can set it to whatever position you need, and then it will lock back in place. But now it's in the way there, so I'm going to lock it back, rotate it down, and now it's in a nice vertical spot where I can grab it and it stays out of the way for the most part. So I'm going to insert a tool. This is an edge finder, and I'll go over how to do some edge finding later. We use this to set the X and Y zeros on the machine relative to the spindle. The center of the spindle is where we measure everything off of. So pretend there's a big axis running all the way through down to the center of this tool. That is what we measure everything off of. So to do this, I'm going to put this down for a second and put a drill chuck in the machine. I'll remove this off to the side so that the vise is out of the way. This is a drill chuck. It has that same groove in there as the collet and the same taper. So this is an R8 tool size. I'm going to put this in the machine, and you see I spun it there a little bit so that the tooth inside the machine would engage. So I've pushed it all the way up. Now I'm going to take the drawbar and tighten it down hand tight. Once it's hand tight, I'm going to take my wrench and push the brake. Put the wrench on top of the drawbar and make sure it's nice and tight. Now this is a little bit too tall for the tool that I'm going to put in there, so I'm going to lower the table down a little bit. Grab the handle. Now that I'm done lowering the table, I'm going to take the handle off, flip it around, and put it back, just so it's out of the way, not going to hit anyone's shin on it. So this tool holder, grab another one. So when you spin it relative to the collet here, the shaft, it will loosen and tighten those 3 little fingers. And you can fit a variety of tool sizes in there. This is only for drills and edge finders. We don't use it for end mills or anything that's going to put a side load on this. So no end mills, only drills. So I'm going to clean off this, make sure there's no shavings, open up the chuck so I can fit the edge finder in. There we go. And there is a max depth you can put it in. So once it's all the way in, I'm going to pull it out just a little bit and tighten that up by hand. Now that I'm sure that this is not going to fall out, I can push the brake of the machine and tighten that a whole lot. Now, I have pretty big hands and I can get a good grab on that and tighten it enough. If you need to, grab a friend, have someone pull the brake while you grab it and tighten it a little bit more. So now you have that in there. And while we're here, I'll show you how to change the speed. So this is in high gear right now. I'm going to turn it on into the forward position. And I want this running at 1200 RPM. So I'm going to run this up a little bit. And you can hear the machine changed pitch a little bit. So now it's running a little bit faster. But if I want to turn it down, but I'm going to leave it at 1200. There we go. And these are just approximate speeds. Nothing needs to be super precise with the speed. Now, I just let this run down naturally, but you can also push the brake and it will stop. So now I want to take all of these tools out. I'm going to do exactly the opposite. Put my hand on the brake, and I kind of put my pinky around the tool so that when I break this loose, it doesn't just fall out. So I can kind of get a hold on it. Take my other hand and loosen up the chuck. And now I have that tool free. Now I can take my wrench, again, pushing the brake. Also make sure that the quill is all the way up. If the quill is not all the way up, you won't be able to see the nut on the drawbar. And it's very confusing sometimes when it goes missing. So hold the brake, put the wrench on there, and loosen it up so that it will be hand tight. We put the wrench down. The wrench is either on the table or on the holder up here. If you leave it on top of this, it will spin and it will get thrown across the room, and that's super dangerous. So now I'm going to hold the tool and make sure it doesn't fall out, but it doesn't just come out. So I'm going to tighten this drawbar up again, just barely hand tight, and go backwards about 2.5 or 3 turns. And then take the hammer and just hit the drawbar on top. One good hit. You won't break it, but make sure that you hit the nut and not the head of the machine. So now this tool is loose and I can take it all the way out. Now that we're done, we're going to put this away. And that's about all for the main tools, main parts of the machine. Did I miss anything? Nope. Okay.